Welcome back, fifth grade. When I left you in chapter 6, Seth, Josiah, and Zach were working in like an invisible rhythm, and they were just meshing together and had an excellent team going on. And here at the end, Seth is saying, man, I just hope Papa can see that this is who I want to be, a carpenter. I'm happy. This is great. So let's see what happens here in chapter 7. I came home Wednesday evening to find kids all over the yard. Kate sat on the steps with two neighbor girls, Catherine Vetter and Francesca Mason, jars of lightning bugs in their laps. The black bug snapped and clicked against the glass, and Kate, grinning, held hers up for me to see. I heard counting coming from behind an umbrella china berry tree next door, and saw a handful of peaked children scramble for good hiding places before the count reached 10. And out in the street, the boys hadn't given up on their game, even though the day's light was almost gone. Jacob Vetter tossed a ball into the air and swung his bat. A loud crack sent Matt and Jacob's cousin, Alan, sliding across the dirt after a fly ball. Clouds of dust billowed into open windows, and then Matt came up victorious. He reared back to throw the ball to Jacob, but something stopped him. He stood true, arm flung back, staring at a young colored boy, not much bigger than Kate, so a little guy. I'd seen the boy watching at the edge of the road, eyes wide and eager, bare toes digging into the dirt. Come on, Matt, Lucas complained. Throw it. Matt just stood there, his face a puzzle. He slowly lowered his arm. What's your name? He asked the boy. Toby. Matt nodded. Well, here you go, Toby, he said, tossing the ball to him. Jacob's waiting. Toby pitched the ball back and sat down in the dirt again, a grin of pure pleasure on his face. For such a little fella, he had a dang good arm on him, and it was Matt who'd surprised me most. He rarely showed his generous side of himself, not to me anyway. I glanced at Lucas and saw amazement skitter across his face too. I remembered Mama's words about there being a good reason for everything that happens, and shrugged. Maybe a bit of Galveston was what Matt had needed all along. I squeezed around the girls and took the steps up to the gallery, two at a time. Mama and Papa sat outside on the east end, catching the breeze and watching the kids play. They waved at me, and Mama hollered, "Supper's in the oven." I waved back, already headed for the kitchen. Thursday morning, I skipped my usual route down Broadway and took Avenue N instead, the same way Ben and I had walked to the beach last Friday. Sunrise colors faded to a cloudless blue sky as I approached the Garten Verein. Unlike my first night here, I heard no band music, no crash of bowling pins, no laughter, but it did make me long for the beach again. As much as I like my job, I found myself looking forward to Saturday evening after work. Ben and I planned to meet at the Pagoda Bathhouse again, and on Sunday we were going fishing. I turned south by Ursuline Academy, and my heart nearly skipped right out of my chest. Blub, 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 lovebird. Ella Rose stood in front of me, about 10 yards away, hair shining, blue eyes smiling. You must be Ben's cousin, she said, walking up to me. Seth, right? I'm Ella Rose Covington. Henry told me that what a good carpenter you are. I couldn't seem to get my mouth open. Henry? My cousin, Henry Covington. He said you work together. Oh, that's right. We do. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you. She gave me a bright smile. You know, I think I saw you when I was swimming last Friday. Whoa, whoa. I nodded, my thoughts a stubborn knot I couldn't work loose. I think I saw you too. You were in the water? Yes, she laughed. And you were looking over the pagoda railing, right? My head bobbed again. I looked for you later, but I guess you were gone by then. You did? That was sweet of you. Oh, fifth grade, look at this blossoming love story. Oh, my. She shot me another radiant smile, and a fierce flutter racked my belly. Will you be going back this weekend? She asked. Yes, Saturday. Saturday after work, for sure. I sucked in a deep breath, trying to still the quiver in my knees. Will I see you there? Oh, I'm sure you will. Me and half a Galveston, she laughed again, then tossed a quick glance at the academy. Sister Agnes promised to help me with my Latin if I came in early, so I have to hurry. She shifted her books. See you Saturday, she called over her shoulder. Yes, Saturday, I said, waving. I stood there by the road, staring after her. Covington, I muttered. Of course. She's Henry's cousin. Stupid, stupid, stupid. A group of passing girls heard me and giggled. Red-faced, I took off for work. Scene change. Mr. Farrell put me with Zach and Josiah again. At the rate you boys are going, he said, we'll make our deadline and get that bonus yet. For the first time, I saw a big smile on Zach's face. I guess he really needed the money with so much family to care for. It made me eager to make sure he got it. Not that I couldn't find a good use for the extra pay myself. I wondered if Ella Rose went to dances at the pavilion. If I ever hoped to take her, I'd have to look into buying some decent clothes. Though, after putting away 3/4 of my pay, the rest won't go very far. I remembered the way that the Gartenverein had looked Friday night, and I could almost see Ella Rose standing under a leafy canopy in front of the pavilion, brilliant light casting a halo of silver around her like. I felt a nudge, blinked, and Ella Rose disappeared. You all right? Zach asked, his arms full of lumber. Yeah, I'm okay. He was daydreaming. I ducked my head, hoping he wouldn't see the sudden heat I felt in my cheeks. I grabbed the sawhorses and carried them up the stairs. By afternoon, a few clouds had rolled in and the wind shifted to the north, beginning to hint of prairie and mesquite, bringing in a hint, a smell of prairie and mesquite, hills and home. I breathed it in, but there was something else, too, tingling at the edge of my senses. I stood by the raised basement, letting the feeling grow inside me, and remembered a north wind always brought change. Mr. Farrell must have sensed something, too. He stood on the gallery looking out over the gulf, his face furrowed with an edgy bewilderment. I looked, too, but couldn't figure out what had caught his attention. The tide was high and the water rough, yet despite the peculiar haze in the sky and the fresh northerly wind, the gulf still swelled and rolled into the beach like it had since the day I arrived. As the day wore on, we all seemed to move slower. The north breeze had done nothing to lessen the heat, as I had hoped. In fact, it grew even sultrier, sitting heavy on my brow and in my chest, weighing me down until every breath was an effort. I soon forgot about Ella Rose, and by sunset, all I wanted to do was go home and fall asleep by the open windows. I'd set the clock to go off earlier Friday morning, and when the alarm sounded, I jumped to turn it off. Lucas groaned, and Matt muttered, "Can't you put a pillow over that thing?" "Go back to sleep," I whispered, jerking on my pants. I carried my best work shirt downstairs and with me, washed up outside, and took extra care in combing my hair. I wonder why he's getting so dressed up and looking sharp. There was a good chance I'd run into Ella Rose again this morning. Oh, question answered. I headed for the kitchen to pack my noon meal and found Mama wrist deep in bread dough. There'd be 6 brown loaves sitting in the stove when I came in this evening. She tilted her big bowl I turned the pale mound into the flower table and began the rhythmic push and fold of kneading. Kate, feet still bare, danced back and forth on the wood floor behind her. Would you take her to the outhouse before you go, Seth, so I can finish up this bread? I groaned. Didn't she know I had a real job now, like Papa? Mama, I asked, I can't keep doing this. I'm not a kid anymore. She paused, slightly in her rhythm, and without ever looking up, she said simply, I know, Seth. I stared at her, waiting for something more, some glimpse of understanding. When it didn't come, I grabbed Kate's hand, pulled her to the door, and down the stairs. By the time I got back in, Mama had finished her kneading and was packing my dinner. She smiled her thanks, but I was too irritated to smile back. Things would never change around here, and I had to face the fact she and Papa might never see me as a grown man, no matter what I did. Without a word, I grabbed up my dinner and headed for the door. We haven't seen grumbly Seth in a while, a whiny Seth in a while, but there he is. The still dark sky looked clear, but felt unusually warm and humid when I left. It was at 2 minutes down the road before I was wiping sweat from my face and swatting mosquitoes. The bit of rain left in the gutters from Tuesday night's storm had spawned some mean little devils, and they all seemed to have a rabid appetite for my neck. The sun was up when I got to Ursuline Academy, but I saw no sign of Ella Rose. I stood waiting, my shirt streaked with sweat and my handkerchief grimy. After a short while, I finally saw her halfway down the block and ran to meet her. I must have looked a mess by the time I caught up with her. She took one look at my sweaty face, laughed, and pulled a lace-trimmed handkerchief from her sleeve. I stared at the embroidered initials in the corner, about to refuse her offer, but found myself reaching for it anyway, sliding it across my forehead and my upper lip. It smelled sweet, like lilacs. I started to hand it back to her, then saw what I'd done to her fresh handkerchief. My cheeks flushed hot. Keep it, she said, pulling out a second one. You might need it later. She patted at the moisture beading on her own forehead and neck, then laughed at the sullied cloth. Where does all this grime come from? I shrugged, smiling at the effortless way she'd set me at ease. She glanced over at the academy and sighed. I have to go. See you tomorrow, I asked. No, question mark. See you tomorrow, I asked. She nodded, waved, and headed for school. I tucked the handkerchief into my pocket and went on to work. Since I started out early, I was at the site long before anyone else. I climbed to the newly finished gallery on the last house, then up to the roof where Frank and Charlie had begun shingling yesterday evening. I could see the whole city from up there and recognized a lot of the buildings that Uncle Nate had pointed out on our trip from the train station. St. Patrick's Catholic Church, with its spire still under construction, and Bath Avenue School, the Levy Building on Market, and the Tremont Hotel, the Twin Towers of St. Mary's Cathedral, and of course, the thousands of gray slate roofs. If you remember, they put gray slate on because of the Great Conflagration, the big fire. Stone roofs don't burn, and that's why they put them on. I turned and looked east, following the curve of the beach toward Bolivar Roads, the great deep-water channel at the end of the island. A large freighter had just emerged from Galveston Bay, making its way through the roads. The north wind blew great plumes of steam over her bow, and I watched till she became a dark spot on the horizon, all but lost in the wide green gulf. Then I heard voices. The men were here, and it was time to go to work. Chapter 8. I'll see you soon, 5th grade.